Hi, this is Jada Swenson, and here are my audio slides. My first slide includes the title, The Life and Times of Colonel Daniel Boone, Hunter, Soldier, and Pioneer. The author is Edward Sylvester Ellis. The country is the United States, and then specifically in Kentucky, but the book was published in Philadelphia. The story was written in 1884, and during that time there was a bunch of fighting between the settlers and the Native Americans because the Native Americans felt like their land was being taken away from them because the pioneers were looking for new land to explore and settle on. In this slide is my big picture concept map. I broke it down into the title and then who it was written by, and then I separated the country and the time it was written, and then it all concluded into what was going on in that time and place. This slide includes the characters, theme, setting, point of view, problems. The main character is Daniel Boone, and this is basically a biography of him. He was the ideal of an American pioneer. He was brave, cool, self-reliant, a dead shot with his rifle, and never discouraged by disasters. Now, in his life journey, he had a bunch of acquaintances. So he was the main character, but he had a ton of acquaintances. Some of those would be General Clark, Colonel Crawford, General Ray, Captain Denham, and many other generals and captains. He also had a lot of encounters with Indian tribes. Some of those would have been the Cherokee and the Shawnee. What a person should understand about these characters is the impact that they had on Boone's life. These were all real people that helped Boone along his life journey and the toughness that life brings when you're a pioneer. What allowed myself to relate to them was all the hardship that they persevered through. Life was tough back then, trying to make a living, but it is also tough in today's world finding a job and making a living as a poor college student. But if these people can do it, so can I. The theme, I would have to say, over Daniel Boone's story could be death, because he lost some of his family members and all the fighting he had to witness. Another theme would be journey, because he was captured 3 times and was in search of a home. Another would be patriotism, for Boone wanted success for his country. Daniel Boone was the typical image when you think of a pioneer and how life was like back in the 1800s. I can relate to Boone's theme of honest simplicity and unfaltering faith. He had that for his country. I have those qualities in life and use them in whatever I do, no matter how tough things get sometimes. The setting. The setting was in the 1800s in the western forests in Kentucky. When a person recognizes the time period, they would know that not much has been developed yet. Kentucky at this time was trying to find a spot in the Union. The story provides good detail in describing how well of a hunter Daniel Boone was. Knowing that piece of information could put a picture in a person's head what it was like to have to hunt for food. This builds to this story because it puts it in perspective how much things have changed and how much tougher it was to survive. It makes all things that Daniel Boone accomplished much more meaningful, because without the hard-working pioneers like him, we probably wouldn't be who we are today as a country. The point of view. The third-person point of view. In this story, the narrator referred to each and every character as he, she, it, or they, and then it's omniscient limited access, has knowledge of all times, people, places, events, including all characters' thoughts. And the last would be problem. The biggest problem in this story is the peace on the frontier. The pioneers are moving into Indian territory looking for land, and the Indians are upset their land is slowly being taken away from them. The hook in this story was how the Indians were reacting to the pioneers. They were stealing people, including Daniel Boone 3 times, and his daughter, whom he had to go rescue. It made me want to read on and find out if there was ever going to be peace on the frontier. Daniel Boone's story explains the power struggle for the early days of the West. It was just interesting reading firsthand some of the battle strategies against the Indians that the generals and the colonels used. In this slide is my storybook focus concept map. I started in the middle with the title of my story, and then I broke it off into the setting, theme, characters, point of view, and the problem. In the problem, I just said that it was basically peace on the frontier, and the pioneers are moving into Indian territory looking for land, and the Indians are upset their land is slowly being taken away from them. So there was a lot of conflict between those two, and Daniel Boone was very involved in those conflicts. The point of view would be the third person point of view and omniscient narrator. And then I explained what those two meant. The narrator refers to all the characters as he, she, it, or they, and then has knowledge of all times, people, places, events, including all characters' thoughts. The characters in here would be the main one I put was Daniel Boone because this is basically a biography over Daniel Boone, and then just a bunch of other ones that I thought stood out to me. In the setting, I said that it was in the 1800s in the western forests of Kentucky, and then just kind of went off of that and said during this time Kentucky was trying to find a spot in the Union. And then last was the theme, and I said death was a big one, journey, and patriotism was kind of the three main themes that I thought stood out. In this slide, you'll find my word sift paragraph that I chose, and the purpose of this is to pick a couple words that you think that will be challenging for some students and define them. The first word I chose was cautious, which means to be careful to avoid potential problems or dangers. I thought this picture would be appropriate because she's kind of dipping her foot into the water, being cautious about it. The next word I picked was keen, which means having or showing eagerness or enthusiasm. I picked this picture to go with keen because she looks really excited and enthused about what she's eating for lunch that day. The next word is crude, constructed in a rudimentary or makeshift way. I chose this little angry guy because he looked pretty blunt on how rude or crude he was. The last word I picked was wander, which means to walk or move in a leisurely, casual, or aimless way. I thought this picture was perfect because he's wandering aimlessly in the desert by himself. To conclude my audio slideshow is the paragraph, author, title, and URL that I am working with. Thank you!